John chapter 11, we hear Jesus say this amazing identity statement about himself. I am the resurrection and I am the life. And certainly on Easter, he proved that what he said about himself, what he believed about himself was true. He is the resurrection because he himself resurrected. He is the life because he himself overcame death. Right? Jesus, right? The resurrection and the life. And so when we know who he is, I believe this, we know who we are. And go ahead and say this for me. I belong to Jesus. Right? I belong to Jesus. Do you know who he is? And do you know who you are? What's your identity? Your identity. I want to talk about identity for a few moments here and the importance of knowing who you are. It was a few weeks ago, actually, when I got an email from a bank saying that I opened up a bank account in California. And so I made a phone call, talked to the bank, figured out that someone was seeking to steal my identity, that someone has my date of birth, someone has my social security, someone has a bunch of information claiming that they themselves are me. Everything got cleared up, everything is good to go, but yet someone was seeking to rob my identity. And what I know to be true in my own life is that my identity seems to be getting robbed over and over again. Part of that's me. Right, part of that's the world, and certainly part of that is something outside of the world, the devil himself. I believe that. When I was young, I really struggled with my identity quite a bit. And I remember there was a moment, and many of you have heard this story, but when I was about 17 years old, I had this picture of Jesus kneeling behind a little boy that was kneeling at his bed praying. And one evening, that picture fell off the wall behind my bed, and when I picked it up in the morning, that picture was crooked. And I remember talking to God about that, saying, God, I don't know if it's me or if I just don't have the right perception of you. And over the last over 2 years then, all of a sudden it became a reality that it was my perception of God, that I didn't know who he was, and therefore I didn't know who I was. But when I found out who he was, the loving Father that I know he is, and Jesus showed this to us, the strong Father that I know he is, all of a sudden I knew who I was. I was a son of God, a child of God, and everything changed for me. And certainly I haven't been perfect over the last 26 years, but I've been living in my identity. My identity as a son of God, a child of God, one who belongs to Jesus. I love what John says in 1 John, which is how great is the love that the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And then I love the next statement, that is what you are. That is what you are. You are a child of God. You belong to Jesus. I don't know if this matters to you, but what I know to be true is that if we know who he is, his identity, we know our identity, and then we know the identity of those around us. And so yes, it tells me what's true about God and what's true about me, but also what's true about others. And so it begins and ends here. And I love that Jesus taught us to pray within our identity right away in the Lord's Prayer, Our Father art in heaven. I love that the disciples of Jesus, when they put together the Apostles' Creed, right, I believe in God the Father Almighty. That's an identity statement, not just who he is, but that's who I am. I am his son. I am his daughter. I am his child. So I pray you know who you are. This world is throwing stuff at us over and over again, but when we know whose we are and who we are, right, that's when things change. This is a game-changing devotion right here. And if you're struggling with believing that God is your Father, that in Jesus we know this, that you are a child of God, I want to encourage you, reach out to a pastor or just open up your Bible and talk to God about who you are and who he is. We belong to Jesus. You belong to Jesus. And I pray that you're able to worship with us this weekend as we begin a new sermon series called What Truth Is and What Truth Isn't, as we hit some hot topics of what the world is saying, but what God also has to say about identity.